different from the original meaning.
Should have said Congress and the President.
Yeah. The 5 core values of our founders. Liberty. And this goes back to John Locke. That God has bestowed certain powers upon individuals that were referred to as rights, and they were limitless. So we talk about unalienable or non-transferable rights. The Declaration of Independence, of course, talks about that. So when people decide that they're going to join together as a civilization, prior to doing that, they have what John Locke would refer to as natural rights. When you then join into a society, you're giving up some of those rights. You don't have a right just to do anything you want. So what the Constitution is it's a grant from we the people, from the people of the United States of America, giving up some rights to the government. And for example, looking after raising an army for protection, things like that, are those rights that we're now giving up and surrendering to a central government. Effectiveness. Part of the reason why the Constitution was written over the Articles of Confederation was the Articles just weren't effective. They didn't have the power to tax. They didn't have the power to have federal laws or central laws that would be applied to individuals. So instead, the Constitution gave our government an effectiveness or an energy of government. A republican form of government, and that's referring to a republic, that we wouldn't have any kind of nobility within our government. The states would be forbidden from giving titles of nobility. And the states also would be forbidden from having a non-republican form of government within the states. So in other words, one of the mantles of the Constitution was to ensure that the states would be a republican form of government. John Adams referred to democracy as that all democracies would commit suicide eventually. Most of the founders did not believe in democracy. So our Constitution actually restrains democracy in a lot of ways, instead having a representative government. But of course, democracy lives within our country because every 2 years, for example, we can boot out people who are in the House of Representatives. Decentralized. That's another term for federalism. So part of the goal of the Constitution was to have a government system where the states were not imposed upon by the central government. There was a relationship between both the states and the federal government. The people, again, are the grantors of. So in other words, the people will maintain ultimate control over what happens in the government. Fiduciary, wonderful term. Fiduciary breaks down to faith and fidelity. And it goes back to fiduciary law. In other words, that the idea that, the example I've used in the past of the last time we met, if you're a farmer, you own some property and you're going to die, you might ask a businessman or a lawyer or a banker to become the fiduciary agent for your holdings. They would then act in your place, and they would make sure the taxes are paid, that the crops are planted, that your family is taken care of. Our government is supposed to be a fiduciary government. They're supposed to be acting, they're supposed to be agents, trustees, servants, and guardians, which are all fiduciary terms that are found within the Constitution. They're supposed to be acting on our behalf in our best interest. So when we have a debt that's increasing by $4 to $5 billion a day, I think most of you probably heard last February We had a new record. $223 billion of debt in 28 days. And they're refusing to reduce the budget this year by $60 billion. So that's roughly, what that'd be 6 days worth of February spending. Now there's opposition to doing that. So the notion of a fiduciary government is extremely important. So in other words, obligations associated with being an agent, a fiduciary agent. You're going to obey instructions, honor limits, act loyally to interests, avoid or disclose conflicts, act in good faith, honesty, honesty in government, exercise independent judgment, no delegation without permission. Does anyone understand what that could relate to?
Czars.
Czars, regulators, no delegation. Impartiality is an extremely important aspect of both fiduciary law as well as the kind of the core values of our framers of the Constitution. Legal environment and structure. Many of our founders and framers, they had been practicing attorneys. Their libraries typically contain legal books as well as religious books. They know their history. A lot of them were trained at London Inns Court, which was a school for barristers. A barrister is an attorney, English attorney. If the king was going to have a royal charter or a grant of authority, the very first words in that grant would identify him as the one who's giving that authority, the grantor. In our preamble of the Constitution, it says, "We the people." So we the people are the grantors. We're the ones who are ultimately in charge of our government. And we are granting permission to the central government to do things on our behalf. The way the document, when you're talking about the Constitution, the way it's broken up, it starts with the preamble. It then, the first 4 articles are divided into sections, paragraphs, and in Article 4 we're also called clauses. The Constitution is laid out, again, as a legal document, and it's fairly straightforward. There's a few exceptions where an enumerated power, where most of them are listed one place, but you might find an enumerated power for Congress located in another location. But basically, you can kind of see this here. Articles 1 through 3, they talk about the 3 branches of power. Articles 4 and 6 talk about the states and the ties between states. Article 5 talks about methods of amendment, and Article 7 talks about ratification. The preamble, again, kind of sets the tone for the entire document. That's typical when you're talking about 18th century legal documents, and it's a custom that's oftentimes used today in legal documents. It can be a key to open up what the mind of the makers originally intended for the document and shed light on the meaning of the document. Our preamble: we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do obtain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. Yes?
The word perfect, I understand, is not what we, at that time, it's not what we,
Complete.
Yeah,
it's
well, tell me.
complete as opposed to,
Perfect is actually kind of talks about effectiveness. So it kind of gets back to some of those core principles. When you look at the preamble, and we're going to talk about the major sections of the preamble, You look about the preamble, it goes back to those core values of our founders. To make the union, and the union already existed.